Hello, I'm Adelina, and it's great to have you with us on Life with God as we continue our conversation on God and freedom. Today's episode features Richard Davidson, professor of Old Testament interpretation at the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary in Berrien Springs, Michigan. We're very excited to hear his thoughts on this program again. But first, let's take a moment to hear a bit more about his background. If you could time travel, to what point in history would you like to go and why?
I would choose the time on Sunday afternoon of Jesus' resurrection when he gave his talk to the people on the way to Emmaus, and he explained how to interpret the Bible. He gave his first lecture on hermeneutics. We don't have a recording of that, and I'd love to go to that time and be walking with him on the way to Emmaus and learn from the master hermeneut about how to interpret scripture.
When you were a kid, what was your dream job?
I wanted to be a teacher.
Nice.
And when I got older, I had as a dream to someday in my old age be a seminary professor. And I got to do that in my 30s. So I've had my dream job all my life.
That's awesome. Besides the Bible, which book was an inspiration to you?
My favorite book, since my name is David's son of David, is the Song of Solomon, written by David's son, Solomon. A great love story. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool romantic. And so taken away by that glorious Song of Songs.
Nice.
So who is a person that you admire or is a role model to you?
You know, I have to look at teachers, from my Bible teacher in high school to my seminary professor, William Shea, who taught me about how to dig deeply into the biblical text and to see the beautiful literary structures. So my teachers have been my role models, and I'm thankful for godly teachers who have given me thoughts to ponder and to build upon.
If you were a water form, what would you be and why?
Oh, I would definitely be a waterfalls. Joanne and I travel. We do vacations going to the various waterfalls around the world. And a high point of visiting Brazil was when I got to go to the Iguazu.
Foz do Iguaçu.
Yes. Oh man, I thought I was in heaven seeing that waterfall. So it has the power of God plus the beauty of the surroundings, and it encaptures. I think there was a waterfall in the Garden of Eden. I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure there must be.
Awesome.
What was the last time that you cried of happiness?
Last week, I was visiting my son in Puerto Vallarta, and he was giving his first concert in Spanish. He's a contemporary Christian musician, and he's become fluent in Spanish. And so listening to him, having mastered the Spanish language and singing those songs, special songs in his concert, just brought great tears of joy to my heart to see what God is doing in his life, and to be moved by the songs that he's written.
Wow. What was the moment that you felt the closest to God?
I feel the closest to God whenever I'm on top of a mountain, because there I can look out. When I'm in Colorado, I can look this way and I have 100 miles of mountains that way and 100 miles of mountains that way. And so my family and I, we break forth into song on top of every mountain, and it's the same song we sing. How big is God? How great and wide his vast domain. To try and tell, these lips can only start. He's big enough to rule the mighty universe, yet small enough to live within my heart. So mountaintop experiences are my forte.
That's awesome.
So, what is a personality trait that you like in people or that you like to have?
Well, I'm a very shy person. It may not seem that way, but I'm a very, I prefer sitting in the book, sitting in a room by myself reading. So I wish I had a little more, maybe boldness. I when I was a pastor, an evangelist came to visit me and saw how timid I was, how shy I was, and knocking on doors, and he gave me the nickname Holy Boldness. So that's the character trait I'm longing through God's grace to have more of, holy boldness, to be bold for him.
Thank you, Dr. Davidson, for giving us a glimpse into your person through these answers. And welcome back to Life with God. Today we talk about freedom, taking an Old Testament perspective. And I would invite us to open the conversation with a question about a kind of historical question, I guess, looking also into the Old Testament literature, so to speak. As far back as the Bible gives us insight into history, in the history of God's cosmos, God's universe, what are some of the first episodes, we could say, where we learn about God's freedom or freedom in general?
Yes, okay, that's a great question. We start with the premise that the Bible makes clear many times throughout the scriptures, God is love, and we see his love painted throughout the scriptures already in the opening glimpses into God's eternity. We see him coming down and building a special house for himself, the sanctuary, and inviting us to have intimate fellowship with him. Mm-hmm. God loves to be close and intimate with us. And we find God sharing the way that sin began was as his creatures exercised their freedom of choice to say no to him. And I find this very fascinating that as Satan called Lucifer dared to reject God, dared to question God, dared to call him unjust, dared to claim that he wanted to be like God and actually replace God. God allowed him to think that way. In fact, even as it ripened into rebellion, I mean, God did everything he could to reach Lucifer, and Lucifer straight-armed God. He refused and became hardened in his rebellion. I mean, that could have been the time when God, as a God of justice, would have said, okay, that's enough. We'll just let you go off into oblivion. But no, he doesn't, because he valued the free choice of free moral agents who would love him because they trusted him, because they cared, they believed in him. And so I find that the quality of God that comes forth from the very beginning is this God that is allowing his creatures to express their love freely and not forcing them like a robot, like an automaton. So Lucifer is still alive. I mean, he should have perished and been punished long ago, but God said, no, I'm not going to risk that my universe will see Satan destroyed, and then they will start serving me because of fear rather than because of love. And so from the very beginning of the universe, we see a God of freedom giving us free moral agency to love him. And this is expanded when we come to Genesis, the beginning of the story of on this earth, where God gives this tree, he says, first of all, Genesis 2:15, of all the trees of the garden, you may freely eat. There it is, freedom. Eat anything, except for this one tree, which is called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Here, the very mention of good and evil implies a choice, implies that they have a choice between good and evil. And many people look at this tree of knowledge of good and evil in the garden as some sort of test, as if God is, subjecting Adam and Eve to some rigorous test to see whether they'll be loyal to him. Well, maybe there's some of that, but I believe the essence of that tree is that God gives Adam and Eve the free choice to choose to serve him because they love him, not because there's no other choice. And so from the very beginning of the universe, a God of love relates with his creatures in freedom, giving them freedom. He is the God of freedom.
So then we could say that as a summary of this, that sin, Lucifer's sin and the sin of Adam and Eve, is a result of freedom, not a result. How can I say? It sounds like a bad casual connection. An implication, I suppose, of freedom, and freedom is a necessary component of love. Sin is not necessary, but freedom is necessary. And Adam and Eve's choices, Lucifer's choices, were to rebel against God. What are the implications after sin of being creatures of freedom?
Throughout the rest of the Bible, we see God always coming as one who is offering a free choice. He's offering freedom. So one of my professors actually went through the Pentateuch, giving one word for God for each book of the Pentateuch, and one word for humans for each book of the Pentateuch. And so for Genesis, he's the creator. And the word for humans is that they messed up. And the book of Genesis ends in a coffin in Egypt. Sin is humans are messed up. They're ruined. Death. But Exodus, then the God of freedom, the God who reaches Israel in its bondage and who brings freedom from bondage, not only to slavery of sin, but slavery in Egypt, but to slavery and sin. And so the Exodus motif becomes the pervasive motif throughout the rest of the Old Testament. God is the God of freedom, and he is wanting to bring freedom from bondage to his people.
Professor, is the concept that we have of freedom in the Bible, in the biblical times, or in the Bible itself, the same as we have today? But because for me, it seems like today for us, freedom is to do whatever we like, or to do whatever, one thinks on his head. I want to do this, and then I will do it, and that is freedom. Is that the biblical concept that we have of freedom, or is there a deeper meaning to that, and which might lead us to a different opinion or to a different path that we have today? Because it seems like freedom, it's like I can do anything that I want or that I would like to.
That's that was Satan's definition of freedom. I want to be independent from God. That's what he tempted Adam and Eve at the garden. He said, did God really say that you shouldn't do this? Come on, be free. Do what you want. You got intelligence. Look, I've taken the fruit and I'm eating and now I'm talking. Can't you see that being independent of God sets you free? And so Lucifer is actually giving a false view of freedom. And in the Exodus, it's very interesting. In the book of Exodus, when God delivers them from slavery in Egypt, he says, I have brought you to myself so that you can serve me. Interestingly, they come to God, their deliverer, so they can serve him, but it's a service of freedom. It's a service of love. It's a sort of service of relationship, which is true freedom. We will have another segment on truth, and we'll see. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And so as they come to God and they learn who he is and his attributes, they are truly set free. So it's not a matter of, there is a book in the Bible that describes the kind of freedom you're describing, and that's the book of Judges. And the rhythm throughout the book is every man did what which is right in his own eyes. And then it gives the results of that, with those terrible stories of the concubine being cut up into 12 pieces and all the other terrible stories at the end of Judges. And some people say, wow, what kind of God is that? And no, the question to ask is, what happens when you do what's right in your own eyes and you have no standard of justice and no standard of right? That's what happens. That's what the world's concept of freedom leads to. It leads to anarchy. It leads to nihilism. It leads to all the things that we're seeing in the world today. So God's freedom is found in his word, interestingly, is found in, and I would say ultimately in his 10 words. The Decalogue is God's Magna Carta of freedom for the world. And I look at those 10 words as not 10 prohibitions or 10 commands. They are 10 promises of freedom. In fact, I've just finished writing my commentary on Exodus, and here's what I argue, that these 10 words here are the 10 words. They're never called commandments, by the way. The 10 commandments are never called the 10 commandments. They're called the 10 words. And the Hebrew grammar of those 10 commandments can be translated either as command or as promise, depending upon the context. Now, three of you are from Brazil. So let me ask you a question. All right, is that fair if I turn a question around?
Yeah.
So when you learned the 10 words, the 10 commandments, what was the first thing that you learned when you learned it in Sabbath school or from your parents? What was the very first part of the 10 words? Did it start with "you shall have no other gods before me"? Is that where it started?
For me, it was the Sabbath.
No, when you're reciting, okay, you're memorizing the 10 words.
Yeah.
So where do you start? Where do you start reciting the 10 words? What's the first thing?
I am your God.
Yeah.
I am your God that delivered you from the land of the Egypt.
Okay, praise God that Brazil has it right, because here in the US, we all were taught, at least everyone I talked to was taught, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." That's the first word. No, that's not the first word. The first word, I am the God, your God, who gave you freedom, who brought you out of the house of bondage. Therefore, what follows is my charter of freedom. Freedom to serve just one God, the only God, rather than all these competing gods that are wanting to make you try to appease them by doing all kinds of terrible things. And you could go down through all of them. All the 10 words are 10 statements, promises of freedom. And so, yes, there's a standard. It's the law of liberty, as James tells us. So that is the true definition of freedom, is getting in harmony with this wonderful law of liberty that is the expression of God's character, the summary of God's character.
Professor, I would like to know how you see that freedom, how it goes through the narrative of the Old Testament. Like we have some, like when we see some characters, normally like the prophets, we see them having like a relationship with God that looks like sometimes, like we already had that, like that discussion in seminary, looks sometimes that they don't have a lot of liberty. Like you have Jonah, right? He tries to run away, and then you have a big fish. And then you have other characters, even like the people of Egypt, people of Israel, and how you see like the liberty going through the narrative of the Old Testament.
Yeah, well, I have to start with, you talked about Israel, the history of Israel. So let's start with their history. And in the book of Exodus, where we find them incorporated as a nation for the first time, the first 18 chapters are summarizing God making them free, redeeming them from bondage. So the very foundation of the Israelite history is God makes them free. They were slaves, and God makes them free. And then comes the law, which we've just described, is a description of what freedom looks like. Freedom is you don't take someone else's wife. You're free to have one wife. You're free to own your possessions and not have someone take them away from you. You can go through all of the 10 words. They're all descriptions of freedom. And the prophets, the message of the prophets is calling us back to these 10 words. The prophets are saying, you have failed to understand what true freedom is. And so you are basically enslaved by sin. And the prophets are calling them to freedom. Now, it's true. As you become a prophet of God, and as you say yes to the prophetic gift, or you're a pastor and you say yes to the call of God, you go through some tough valleys of the shadow of death sometimes. And if you're not looking closely, you may think you're into some kind of slavery. But every time God leads us into the valley of the shadow of death, it's so that he can set us free more. And so those times when God is telling Jonah, Jonah, go to Nineveh. What's he basically telling Jonah? Jonah, you are slave to a misconception of me. You think that I only love Israel and I don't love the world. I don't love wicked people. I don't love the Ninevites. They're your enemies and you think that they're my enemies too. And Jonah, you got to get a bigger picture. You're enslaved to a too small a picture of God. And so God is trying to set free Jonah from his constricted views of God. And that's the focus of the whole book. Till Jonah finally admits in the last chapter, he says, I knew you were that kind of a God. I knew you loved the heathen. That's why I didn't want to go. And then God ends with the cry out to Jonah, saying, Jonah, and he talks about the city. He said, don't you think I love the Ninevites? Don't you think I love those animals that I want to be able to save, just like I love you? And so God's truth is wanting to set us free, and he has to also deal sometimes tough love with us to help us really be free from those things which enslave us. Usually they're false ideas about God.
I think I'm having a question that went through my mind also in season 3 about power, and I don't think it was resolved in that season. I don't know if we can resolve it in this season, because these are questions that we haven't really asked. What is power? What is freedom? The question that I'm having is freedom and power, are these neutral concepts that can be applied one way or another? You could look at it that way. Or is it always true power, which is defined by other in relation to other concepts, and there is false power that is really a form of weakness, let's say. But let's come to freedom. Yeah, because you mentioned earlier kind of false freedom versus true freedom. And that's where my question, because for example, with Lucifer, he didn't have neutral freedom. He had true freedom from God. And then he used that true freedom to stir or to nourish, let's say, a false sense of freedom, of autonomy and independence.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. It's like conceptual thinking, but it's still confusing to me whether our definitions of the gifts, the abilities that God gives us of power and freedom, are these neutral and can be used for good and for bad, or are they always a true or a counterfeit? And in that sense, yeah, it's like this whole this whole system of God's values is flipped upside down by sin, and it's really confusing in how we define things. That's kind of where I am right now.
No, I think you're right. We need to have a season on God as power, maybe, to see that God's power is just the opposite of what our world thinks of as power.
Yeah.
You know, as Jesus said to his disciples, you want to lord it over them, but I have been your servant.
Yeah.
And so you see the God as the one who is exercising power in the power of love, the power of service, the power of gentleness, the power of meekness. And so and you find it in the most unusual places, like on Mount Sinai, where you would think you would hear God saying, you know, he's got all of the pyrotechnic display there, and he's coming out with the earthquake and the fire and everything. But you know what he emphasizes about his character in the book of Exodus is his graciousness. The very center of the book, God says, I am gracious, and I am the one who is, I am coming down to be close to you. I'm wanting to surrender my power, as it were, to come close and to show you what real power is in love, in service, and in gracious acts. And so God turns upside down what real power is. I see there in the book of Exodus and throughout the rest of the scriptures. And the same with freedom. It's paradoxical. We sing this song, make me a captive, Lord, and then I shall be free. You ever sung that song? Every verse is a paradox. Make me a captive, and then I'll truly be free. Let me be wholly embraced by you, who is freedom, and then I will have freedom. And so the element of mystery is always here. The element of the paradox, the irony that our freedom comes when he sets us free from everything that's not him, because he is freedom.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, that's it. Let's go on.
No,
I don't think we solved Adelina's question yet, but we made a stab toward it. So we'll go back.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
So I'm gonna go
Lisa,
through a perspective of like we understand that like there's more freedom when we're like you said, captivated by God, you know. But my thing is, how can I show that to the people of this world in the sense of it sounds, I don't know if you guys can notice that, but it sounds like it's a limited freedom. Because like if you can have another wife, you can, but you can't, you know. And I'm a curious person, so that's why I say that. So I like to try new things. I'm not saying that I'm gonna have 2 wives, so I'm gonna have a wife at all. I'm just saying that I feel like I love trying new things, and people that don't have this religious background, they will try new things, but things that might not be good for them. So my idea is, how can I explain to them that that God is freedom, you know, because we are living in a bubble here. Like right now we're in the bubble. We are talking to like 3 pastors, and you know, so I always try to bring this explanation to outside, because it is the people that we live with, you know, that we have time, that we spend time with. So the thing you explained about the 10 commandments, the 10 promises, it was just mind-blowing. It was just really, like, it really changed the way I see it now. So I'm thinking, like, how can I do that? How can I be this person that like open that's giving you know, a person like the idea of freedom, that the way that it is, without sounding like a limited freedom. Because if I do something, I'm not gonna go to heaven, stuff like that. So
yeah,
that made sense.
Well, that's why it's so important that we start the 10 words with verse 2 rather than verse 3, like you do in Brazil. Because if you don't have verse 2,
Right.
then they're just harsh commandments, harsh prohibitions. Do this, don't do this, so you can be saved, so you won't be saved. No. But if you start with verse 2, I am the Lord your God who has already redeemed you, has already made you free. Now that's already settled. Your salvation is settled. He's freed you. He's made you a free creature. And so if you can help people understand that that's where salvation comes, is accepting his freedom. Freedom from all of the hangups that hinder us, that mess us up, that destroy us. And so he's then giving us these promises of how we can live that life of freedom. And he's saying, here I try to give the 10 words always in a positive and not in a negative. Ellen White has this amazing quote where she says, there is not a negative in the 10 commandments. They are 10 promises. There is not one negative.
Wow.
Because they are all statements of what true freedom is like. And so you have to take time to explore and show. And I tried to do this in the commentary that I'm writing on Exodus for each one of these commandments, to show that when God is saying, worship, you're free now to worship the one true God. He's the one God that's not asking you to go on meaningless types of self-flagellations and all kinds of ways to try to convince him that you love him. He says, I love you unconditionally. I'm the God that is the only God. And so he sets you free from all the false gods. And so I think our job is to communicate that all the alternatives to these 10 words are avenues into slavery. But I want to add one more little piece. I think we usually put the 10 words as applying to us. There are Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
But actually, the focus, I think, is upon they are also the Bill of Rights for your neighbor. And so every one of these, the sixth word, you shall not kill. That gives the right for everyone around you to be alive, for you not to take their life. Also, it gives you the right to live a long time. I plan on playing tennis at the age of 104 because I've been living as healthy a life as I know how, and I'm going to be free. I look at all of my relatives that didn't care about their health. They're all laying in bed, dying of various diseases. No, I'm going to be around. I'm going to be alive for 104. Okay, so I say that because I was down at a camp meeting one time, and the conference president, the opening night, was saying, let's see who we can honor here. Let's honor those who are older. So everyone that's 80 and 80, raise your hand. So a bunch of people raised their hand. Everyone that's 90, there were only a couple. And then before he could get to the other one, this lady bounded out from her chair and she says, I'm 104. She bounds up the steps and gets to the microphone and she says, and I'm looking for a man. And it just was crazy. And so I said, man, I'm going to be that lady. I'm going to be 104, still out there engaging in life. And so what would keep me from doing that? If I do things that don't respect my body, it's going to shorten my life. So if we get people thinking this way, that thou shalt not steal, I'm not going to take anyone's things. You can be safe. When I'm around, you can know I'm not going to take your things because I want you to be free. So I'm protecting the rights of other people. They make sense. All of them make sense when you actually break them apart and see them as promises for freedom. And that's why I think James calls this the law of liberty. It's the law of liberty. It's God's character, and he's trying to describe it. So they're safeguards for us not to fall into bondage anywhere. Now, for people that don't understand, that have the wrong idea of freedom means you can do whatever you want. They have to get that basic idea. You have to get a different understanding of that basic idea, and then it becomes. But I think we need you as a communication person. You need to present the positive of all of these laws, like the Sabbath. Don't harp on the you shall not work. Our Jewish brothers have got it right. They don't say, "Oh, I can't work on the Sabbath." They say, "I don't have to work on the Sabbath because I'm free. I don't have to be a slave to labor on. I don't have to have the tyranny of work on me because I'm free on the Sabbath." And so we got to turn everything around to make it into this positive, powerful proclamation of liberty.
There were like I don't know if Isa is going to compliment something.
No, I was gonna ask a question, but it's all right. You can go for it.
Oh no, yeah. So actually, I was like surprised with what you said because it reminded me of something. There is this philosopher and professor as well, Walter Brueggemann, and that he says that about the liberty that we have in society. And I don't think I would agree with everything that he writes, but he is, for me, was like the first time that I saw that that because we are free, that we can actually connect with these laws of God or these laws of freedom as well. But I would like to also cite quote Rudolf Steiner. He was a philosopher that wrote about the philosophy of freedom, and he says that actually the first step to freedom is to understand why you do something. And for me, it actually goes, right besides the conception that we have that God's law frees us. Because as we are enslaved by sin, sometimes I do something or I commit a sin that I actually don't know why I did it. It wasn't like it wasn't my nature. I don't know why I did it. I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway. And sometimes it seems like the law of God, it actually shows me why I'm doing the righteous deeds, or why God is trying to lead me to be free of sin. I don't know if you have like a comment on that, or like a different perspective or a similar perception on it. But it seems to me that it is that way. Like the God laws, the God of freedom, or God's law, actually free us to not be enslaved of sin, to not be enslaved by sin.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And we've already cited that verse, "The truth shall make you free." And the truth is best summarized in the 10 words, where these are really this is the description of the character of God. God is the one who upholds all of these principles of freedom. And so the more we look at him, the more we focus upon his qualities of character, the more we become changed into his image. And the less we want to, we'll be able to recognize the counterfeits, and we'll recognize them. Those claims of freedom are just fake. They don't last. They don't satisfy. And the only ones that satisfy are these ones that represent the character of God, because that's what reality is. So I think you're right on.
I think what's also helpful is to just keep in perspective the fact that we're temporal beings, in the sense that we're historical beings and that things unfold over time. And then we can benefit from the experience of those who came before us, right? So in that sense, I'm also thinking of Israel. We've talked about Lucifer and Adam and Eve and their experience with freedom. But the Old Testament is really essentially the story of the people of Israel. I wonder if you could share some episodes where Israel employed a counterfeit concept of freedom, let's say, and what the results of that were, or maybe the positive flip side of that, where they engage in true freedom and what the effects of that were.
Yeah. Let's stay in the Pentateuch for a while. So we come to the end of the 40 years in the wilderness wandering, and we have seen them choose not to go God's way there at Kadesh Barnea, and so they have to suffer the consequences of wandering around for 40 years. So Moses gives this final sermon from Mount Nebo, and it's very vivid for me because 2 weeks ago I was standing on top of Mount Nebo and in our tour, and so
Wow.
we thought of Moses there sharing this final sermon, and then coming up to Mount Nebo to meet with God for the last time. But in his sermon, he ends Deuteronomy by saying, "Choose you. I've set before you life and death. Therefore, choose life, that you may live, that you may truly live." And so here is Israel standing at the borders of the promised land, and they've chosen sometimes freedom, to be free with God, and it's led to joy in the wilderness. They've been brought into a covenant relationship with Him, but sometimes they've broken the covenant and they've experienced the problems. And so God, at that moment, He tells Israel, make your choice now. Choose whom you're going to serve. Who choose life? I've set before you death and life. And so then at the end of, so then you go through the time of Joshua, the conquest of Canaan. And at the end of Joshua's life, once more, at Joshua 24, he says, so who are you going to serve? Are you truly going to, God is giving you this choice. You are free to choose. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And so Joshua again makes an appeal for them to make wise choices. They have the gift of freedom, but to choose wisely. And I find the rest of the books of the Bible present these two ways. The Proverbs, the Psalms, especially the words of Solomon. I have given you these two ways, the way of death, the way of life, the way of wisdom, the way of folly. And it's continually a call for Israel to choose. And the prophets are prompting them, choose the way of life. Don't go the way of death. And too often they follow in the way of death, and the prophets are calling them back. So I think the whole story of the Bible is God offering this choice and saying, here are the two ways you can choose. I'm telling you the consequences of each of those ways. Choose wisely, choose life and not death. And we know the stories when they chose death. They went into captivity. But God wasn't over with them even then. He says, I'm going to bring you back. And so God's offering them another chance at freedom. And then to me, the most exciting part of freedom in the Bible is the description of the Jubilee, where God says, I can't totally remove the structures of society that are there today in their situation, but I can say that every 50 years, everyone is going to come back free. The land is going to come back to its owner, and I'm going to free the captives. All the ones that are captive are going to be free. And Jesus plugs into that in Luke 4 and in his opening sermon of his ministry, and says, I have come to let the captives go free. So God is the God of freedom, and he's giving the choice of life and death for everyone. And the history of Israel is the history of their choices. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And we see the consequences of those choices, unfortunately.
Adding to that, a question though, why freedom then? Because like if there's two ways, one is bad, one is good, why freedom? Like God could just literally like take the wheel and do and just like everything would be all right. So my question would be like, why is it then? So what was the necessity of freedom?
Yeah, that's a good question. My answer is that there would be one thing that would be lost, and that would be love. Because as soon as you tell someone, if I would go out on when I went out on my first date with Joanne back in college, and I said to her after our first date, so you better meet me next Saturday night at 7:00, because that's what you got to do. I can guarantee she wouldn't have showed up. Without freedom to say no, without freedom to choose the good from the bad, there's no love. And God said, I want love which is freely given, and I'm willing to take the consequences of that as a messy universe for thousands of years, as Satan is giving lies about me that I'm not truly free. But people need to see that I am a God of love, and they need to freely choose me. I don't want to be a robot. I'm sorry. Everyone would do what they said. I mean, artificial intelligence, that type of thing. But where's the love there? There's no love. And I think that's the answer.
Awesome. Adding to what you said, remind me of there's a TV show that I really love. It's my favorite. It's called Fleabag, and there's this one scene she's confessing to a priest, and she's like, "I honestly just want somebody to tell me what I'm gonna do tomorrow. I just want somebody to tell me what to eat for breakfast, breakfast. Sorry,
Yeah.
what I'm gonna wear." And it kind of like when I was thinking that to add to the question, I was like, wait, but that's exactly what we want. We want somebody to like take over, and God literally just gave us like the list of like, if you do this, it's all right, like you're gonna be okay, because you know what we're gonna do tomorrow, like about the Sabbath, we're gonna rest, so it's kind of funny, but it's still I like to question things, so questioning why freedom, then it was a great answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question too.
You talk about the year of the Jubilee. That is an idea
Yes.
that I love in the Bible. So you have the year of the Jubilee, you have all the 7 years of libertation also, right? And that's like just an idea I would love if that happened today. Like 50 years, everything stops. It would be awesome. But unfortunately, I think that would break some systems down. So I would love to see from you some ideas and some principles that we could get like from that freedom, like we have in the Bible from the Jubilee in the Old Testament, the 7 years. Also, when Jesus comes and he says that he's going to be the one that he will fulfill really the year of the Jubilee, and how can we apply to that to us today, that we live in the system that some kind of way tries to not make us feel free or tries to make us down. Like how can we apply some of the principles from the Old Testament, from the freedom from the Bible, from the year of the Jubilee for us today?
Yeah, no, that's good. I don't know if you're into hearing any contemporary Christian songs from the U.S. Have you ever heard of Michael Card? Michael Card is music. You need to do a Google search for Michael Card, his song,
I will.
Jesus is our Jubilee. And it's one of the most powerful songs. My first introduction to Michael Card when I started teaching, he was the great contemporary Christian singer that started out a lot of people here in the U.S. But that song, I think, summarizes it. Jesus is our Jubilee. And it goes on, my famous line of that is that when you look into your judge's face, you see a Savior there. That Jesus is the Jubilee because he has died for us. He has saved us, and he brings us freedom from sin, and he brings us freedom from judgment, from condemnation, so that we can experience every day the Jubilee freedom in our lives. So Jesus will come eventually. I believe it'll be sooner than later. And the Jubilee is going to start literally when this earth we're taken to heaven and we're there for 1,000 years, and then we come back and we have the new earth and everything will be perfect again. The Jubilee will actually literally take place. But I think we can take small steps now. I have a garden that I take care of, and I can apply the sabbatical year principle, because it's a principle of God's stewardship of the earth. So every 7 years, I work my garden, but then I rest part of it. So every year, part of my garden is resting. It's having its sabbatical year. And if we were really on top of this sabbatical principle, we would give pastors, after 6 years of work, we would give them 1 year free to do their research, to do their study, to do their travel, to have that experience. So we have a sabbatical here at Andrews. It's like 3 months. It's a fake sabbatical. God has the rhythm of 6 and then 7. So I think our productivity as pastors, as communicators, would be greatly enhanced if we dared to follow the Jubilee sabbatical principle.
All the knowledge that you shared from the Bible is extremely useful. But back to Isadora's comment and question, at the end of the day, however much we tell somebody about God's freedom and the true freedom, in the Bible, that if they don't experience it personally, they will never believe it truly. So there is an experiential aspect. Freedom is part of us. It's something you experience, you perceive, you feel, and you also intellectually absorb, of course. So there is a balance there of our holistic being, understanding, but also taking that step of, just experiencing it, I guess.
Because of you saying that, I can't help but just burst forth with an amen, because I look back to the first 25 years of my life before I understood righteousness by faith, justification by faith, before I understood the freedom in the gospel. And I was never free. I was always bound by, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. It's trying to be better, for God to love me, for God to accept me. I preached sermons about Jesus for 3 or 4 years as a young pastor, but never gave anyone assurance of salvation and freedom in Jesus, because I didn't ever experience it. Until finally, through a set of circumstances, God set me free. He helped me see that the gospel frees me from having to try to work my way to salvation. I reach out and accept that free gift every day, and my life has never been the same since. So a life of freedom is something that you have to experience, and then, man, you don't want to go back. You don't want to go back to the old way again.
So I was just thinking, oh God, my mind went blank. No. Oh man. I remember.
Well, while you're thinking, I'll just answer what I think maybe should be the question that comes from
Okay.
maybe that is
Okay.
you as a communicator. I believe, and you're asking the questions of how can we get people to actually see them this way. I think we can do it by our examples. Let's start with the Sabbath. If people come to church on Sabbath and they see what the Sabbath can be in its truly dynamic dimensions of rest, we don't have to tell them, oh, you can't work on the Sabbath. They say, bring it on. I want this kind of rest. I want this kind of joy. I can't wait to start experiencing it. And then it's not negatives. It's not don'ts. It's not bondage. It's freedom. So maybe now you think of your question.
I did, yeah. You kind of answered it, but I was just we usually see that like people tend to like love Jesus but hate church. Hate like they usually like, oh, I love the Jesus, but I hate the fandom. Like I hate the the people that worship him. So I was just thinking, and that's more personal, but do you think that today like church limits like freedom? Do you think there is a difference like between the freedom of God and the freedom that church is praying about, like is speaking about? Because I feel like that's one of the things that my friends kind of feel about, like, I love Jesus, I'm just like doing my thing with him, like in the Bible, private, but like the moment I go to church, I feel like I don't have freedom. So my question would be towards that, like if there is
to me,
sorry.
to me, your question is right on, because we just finished studying the three angels' messages in our Sabbath school lesson here, and we see the false worship and true worship, and the true worship is one of free expression in a setting of wonder and excess and adoration and praise and joy. And false worship is force. It is traditions. It is binding of us in ways that we don't feel free. And so I believe it is our task. And our little church, where I go to church, we have taken this on in the last couple of years. We've said, our church has to be a church of freedom. And so we just voted a statement of our goal. And our first goal is to be a safe church where people could come to experience freedom in Jesus, freedom to love him, freedom to experience him, freedom to express in their own ways, and freedom to not be condemned for what they are doing or not doing. And I tell you, it's made an amazing change in our church. We have a church now that people come because they feel more free, because they feel free to express their own doubts and their concerns and their questions and their struggles. And it can be, I think it can be either way. And we need to make church that kind of haven of safety and freedom for those who are in bondage to sin. Then they'll see the difference and they'll want to change. It's up to us.
That made me a bit emotional. Amen. Yeah, that's awesome. That's beautiful.
All right. Any takeaways from the conversation?
Oh, I'll start then. For me, it's freeing. It's freeing, to understand and to actually have this perspective, of not only freedom of existing, to be honest, because I feel like with God, the first freedom that we have is from the non-existence. He actually created us. He actually freed us, from the non-existence. So for me, this is my first freedom that I have, is to actually to exist and to actually to meet new people, to understand how much God is good for us and loves us in this way, and to actually understand as well that the law of God is a law of it's a law of freedom, a law of love, and to actually see that in practice, as you said, Dr. Davidson, in your church, and to allow that for us not to be afraid, of talking with God, and actually to understand and try to understand and trying to actually just accept people is really reassuring. And it reminds me of Isaiah 1:18, come and let's talk about, and let's to understand what this freedom, what my love for you it is, in all this season we're talking about that, and actually to understand the right thing about freedom. What is actually freedom? Is not to do whatever I want, or whatever I think is right, but in spite of that, to understand and see that freedom, it is to love my neighbor, it is to do the right thing, it is not to want to do bad things, but actually be free of the bad things that we want to do. So that is my general takeaway.
Beautiful, John. Beautiful.
For me, I would like to start. I'm reading a book right now from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Rachel, God in Search of Man.
Yes.
And it's really good. I have the book right here. And I want to just read that I was like when we were talking was, hey, I read that this week. So I wanted to read that he says, doesn't exist freedom except the freedom that was given us by God. Don't exist freedom without holiness. Mm-hmm. So I think that gets really much like from the first part of a conversation that we're talking about, like how freedom is that freedom that goes together with God. That the freedom that God gave us is the actual freedom, the real freedom. But he talks about like is the way of holiness, right? And then like sometimes you can think about like holiness. I don't know, like an old guy that he has his back hurting, he's walking, and there's a guy holding, like he got the, I don't know, a monk or something like that. But I think from the second part of this conversation, I can see that this holiness, this freedom that guy holiness is actually a guy that is screaming, is singing, is jumping, is going, he's happy about being free. And now he's just trying to show to the whole world that being free is beautiful. And let's come with me and let's try to be free together. So thank you very much for giving me this new insight above Haitian. So thanks.
Amen.
Well, for me, it's funny, like this is my second time on an episode of Freedom. And the first one, I kind of like, my takeaway was that I was able to define freedom as empathy. And for this one, I kind of define as love, which walk really like together with empathy. But also like freedom is a safe space. What you said is still like just me thinking, I get emotional again, because like this is what I miss about church. I miss church being a safe space. So somehow I just want to recognize and thank you for doing that at your church. But it's beautiful how freedom, it's such an amazing thing, it's such a beautiful thing, but for so long we don't see it like that. We only see the don'ts, and that's painful. That's very painful. And I think it takes a while for you to understand, because I feel like the way we are raised, like I'm the third generation of Seventh-day Adventist, right? So I understand like sometimes you gotta learn in the strict way so you can understand that it's not really like that, but it kind of changed the way you think about things. So every time that I learn more about God, more about the love of God, and especially freedom, and again, knowledge, so the truth will set you free, right? It's just very beautiful. And I'll try not to cry again, but it's really a beautiful thing, and I really wish we can all make church safe space again. So yeah, thank you for that.
God's going to help you, I believe, to make your church safe space. Yes.
It will.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, maybe a couple of takeaways. One is that freedom is a burden in a sense, burden not in a negative way, but just has a weight on us. And I think that weight is a price that we pay for love. This is not a negative statement, it's just the way it is. And so, like Isadora mentioned earlier, yes, it's a burden to have to choose, but it's a positive thing when we engage it in this burden with God, so to speak. But it is a cost. It is a cost of love. And I think your emphasis on the great controversy kind of stayed with me, because it was very clear in the conversation. And I just want to reiterate for our viewers especially, that sin was a choice. It was not a necessity. It was a choice. It was not a necessity. And I think the foremost example of freedom that comes to my mind is Jesus's choice to solve the problem of sin. That was not a necessity, it was a choice. So he responded to our misuse of freedom, if I can put it this way, to our embracing a counterfeit concept of freedom, by dying for us, by going to the extreme of laying down his life for us to recover genuine freedom with him.
Beautiful.
Yes, thank you so much for the conversation. Again, very, very appreciate it. What are your concluding remarks on the topic?
Well, once again, I just want to read a verse that we've the listeners will not know this, but we just recorded on justice. And so this verse summarizes both justice and freedom. It's the only verse I know that has both of them together. In Psalm 146 and verse 7. Speaks about God. Happy is he who has the God of Jacob for his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God, who made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them, who keeps truth forever, who executes justice for the oppressed, who gives food to the hungry, and the Lord gives freedom to the prisoners. And so our Creator, Maker, just God is the God who gives us his freedom. And I'm so thankful for that blessed hope that we have, that blessed experience we can have in him.
A heartfelt thank you to our special guests and to the student panelists for their thoughtful engagement. On behalf of our sponsor, the Adventist Theological Society, and on behalf of the Life with God team, I would like to also thank our viewers and our listeners for being here. We hope that you have learned some new and helpful insights that will transform you more into the likeness of God and empower you to become a better human being. As you can see, these conversations bring together young adults and scholars who have dedicated their lives to advancing our understanding of God, of the Bible, and of the complex human personhood. It is a unique opportunity for you to get to know these committed servant leaders and learn from them as they interact with students from around the world. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do so with your presence, your comments, your prayers, and by sharing the program. If you're so inclined, you can also extend your financial support by donating to the Adventist Theological Society. To do so, go to www.atsjats.org/resources and find the Donate Now button. Make sure you also subscribe to the Adventist Theological Society YouTube channel, where you will find past and ongoing seasons. Thank you again, and I hope that you will join us next time as well.